Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the Public Works Podcast. My name is Joseph Blackman, but today we got a real treat for you. His name is Bob Fischer, and he is the Water Quality Superintendent at the City of South Burlington in Vermont. He's also the New England Water Environment Association current past president. Bob, say what's up to everybody.
How you doing?
Bob, you've got a pretty cool title going on. Let's start off with the New England Water Environment Association current past president. A lot of people don't know what a past president is. That's the person who was just the president on the last term, and now you're the past president. Most of the time, this is where you're like trying to get away because you're burnt out from your presidency.
Wow, you nailed this. Obviously, yeah, you've heard this before.
Yeah.
Yes, our annual conference in Boston starts on Saturday. So come Wednesday, I will no longer be on the senior management team, and I'll be a past president.
So during your presidency, everybody says, well, if you could be president for a day or CEO for a day, what would you change? So when you were the president, what were some of the one or two top marching orders that you wanted to get done?
Oh yes, that was a lot of fun. So the president before me, his theme, everyone has a theme. He was from New Hampshire, and his theme was 50 years the Clean Water Act. That really can't be contentious at all. The current president, his is work for water. It's workforce development. Really no problems there either. Mine was one water. Trying to get everybody to play nice together in the sandbox.
Sticky, yeah.
Yeah, that one's not so easy. So my Don Quixotean task of trying to get all the various water, wastewater organization, NGOs, federal, state, to all kind of work together. As I've explained to them many times, there's this much work needs to be done. We do this much, you do this much. So together we can do this much, and there's still this much work. It's depressing. Nonetheless, if we all do the same exact thing, then we're not right. Anyway, you can imagine that entrenched organizations, egos, other things, were an impediment to. But I did make movement. I knew it would be incremental in trying to get people to play nicer together and work for. If we have the common goal of public health in the environment. Yeah. You're doing a disservice to today's youth and future generations if you're not working collaboratively for efficient. It's more efficient.
100%. I've heard of the concept of one water, and I guess to distill it down, for lack of a better term, wastewater and water kind of under the same umbrella. Can you give us a more working definition of it? And then also, why wouldn't people want one water?
Oh, that's a good question. So basically, I'm not really, inventing the wheel here. In Vermont, where we're at, I'm a past president of the state association, Green Mountain Water Environment Association, about 10 plus years ago. And we've been a joint association since 1994 of water and wastewater. Canada's generally joint associations. Europe is generally joint associations. There are other ones throughout the United States. The vast majority are separated between, comes down from AWWA, American Water Works Association, and then WEF, Water Environment Association. So the clean water side and the drinking water side. And we're both in Vermont. So when I was also the government affairs, remember, it's a very small state. So I've got 10 different hats. And mostly because I'm, follically challenged. But nonetheless, yeah, it looks nice. I just did my hair. So when I was the government affairs chair, we competed for training and whatnot, somewhat with Vermont Rural Water Association, the Rural Water Association here. I brought them into our government affairs committee. Some people weren't happy. I then brought in Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns because there's a lot of work to be done and many hands make the job easier. That has been very effective for 15 years now. Probably roughly, we've worked together. We go to the State House together. I will actually be at the Vermont State House at 1:00 testifying again, much as I was in a suit the last 3 days testifying on biosolids, and chloride is another upcoming TMDL possibly with all this road salt here. And so once again, that worked out well. We work very effectively together. We do joint press releases. during coronavirus. We worked very close together. We're on WARN together. I'm on the steering committee for the Water Action Response Network. It is under FEMA, and it's for basically disaster responses. The reason you would join it, a municipality, is if you assist another municipality, you then fall under the federal umbrella, and you will, if there's any union issues or if someone gets hurt, you're all covered. Versus just going out on your own, if, with another municipality trying to help someone out, they get hurt, the wages may be different. So I would highly encourage any municipality to join the WARN. If there's a website, WARN, and it's federal, and it's each one's managed at the state level. It's mostly managed by Vermont DEC and Vermont Rural Water Association. So once again, we've worked very collaboratively here in Vermont, and it's very effective. Also, another thing I initiated after that, not long afterward, I reached out to Vermont DEC and asked, can we have a meeting? That has evolved into quarterly meetings that have been quite long. They're 3-hour meetings now. One of the, I think it was the head of drinking water, said to me, wow, I learned more here than I do anywhere else, because we don't generally have all these disparate groups in the room from, solid waste, wastewater, etc. It has been highly successful. So we're actually just very recently, in the last half a year or so, we've kind of divided it up somewhat because the meetings were just becoming too long, and some of the things, weren't of interest to others. So we've kind of broken them up more by topic now. We have more stormwater session and with that, and wastewater and water. So also then I was the NEWIA, New England Water Environment Association Government Affairs Chair for 3 years, because it's a 3-year term. In Green Mountain, there is no term. I was it for at least 10 years.
Wow.
Someone else wanted to do it. And so we initiated that, the Regulators Roundtable, I think about 5 or 6 years ago at the annual conference. The 6 New England states, we asked for the head of generally wastewater management to come, and they, a 2-hour session. And once again, it was for One Water, more or less, before I'd even developed that. It was to collaboration, and it wasn't so much, the room's packed. It's a very, very well-attended session. And there'll be one coming up again. But it wasn't just for the people in the room, the engineers, operators, etc. It was for the regulators themselves to have more cross communication amongst the 6 states. And they have found it very interesting. They'll be like, oh, you do this there, I do this here. And there wasn't a lot of communication. So that has been quite successful also. Then when you move on to One Water, where you then try to draw in more people, not just New England Water Works Association, which is the drinking water side, and they've been around since like 1862 or something.
Oh,
NEWIA has been around since 1929. I know that's correct, because I'm only the second person from Vermont to be the president, because it's a small state and there's just not too many of us. So they would have picked a shiny rock at this point. And once again, if I take my hat off from Vermont, that's what
shiny rock.
Exactly. So, beyond that level, we are working closer with NEWA, and but my vision's a little broader than others. Some people want to call it that's that. When I was the government affairs chair of the state association, I also invited Conservation Law Foundation to our meetings. They came, they're a environmental advocacy group of lawyers. And I invite anyone I can. Certainly at the NEWIA level last year, I tried to work closer with NEWIPIC, New England Interstate Water Pollution Control Commission. They've been around since 1947, I believe. And they are, a quasi-federal agency that oversees the 6 New England states and New York. So there's 7 states. And they have a budget of 70 million plus, and they have, I believe they have 200 staff. And their goal is to train operators and assist wastewater facilities and technical trainings. And NEWIA's goal is to train operators, the same exact thing.
Yeah.
So I thought we should work more closely with them. They are a nonprofit also, even though they are not a member-driven association, paid. Nonetheless, I got a lot of pushback on that one. Some people just don't want to play nice together.
Yep.
For various reasons. It is what it is. I would then, at the New England level, I would have liked my term's over, to open it once again, mimic what we did in Vermont, and have more collaboration with national rural water. We all have the same goals.
Yeah.
And the same, so collaboration for efficiency.
What do you say because I've seen this in some nonprofits also. I'm in Arizona, and you see, like, let's talk about the homeless issue. This totally unrelated, but it'll make sense. Let's say two nonprofits, they want to tackle homelessness. I'm a fan of synergy. 1 + 1 is greater than 2. Meaning if you and I put our muscles together, we can lift a car versus you trying on your own and me trying on my own.
Yeah.
So the hesitancy from what I've seen is that who takes the cake, who gets the pat on the back.
Money. That too.
Yeah. Like when the money comes in, we don't want to split it with you. Or when the pats on the back get handed out, I don't want to share any with you. Why is that? And especially in water, it's a need that it's something. There's no Democratic water, there's no Republican water. Why can't we all play nice in the sandbox?
Yeah, it seems simple enough, doesn't it? As someone said to me, so New England Water Works Association, I don't know if you're cognizant of this, they got into a legal issue with American Water Works Association. And there was a long running battle, more or less. It had to do with membership. If you're a member of NUIA, you're also a WEF member, which is actually the majority of your money. I think $80-some of your $130 goes to that.
Oh, really? I didn't know
that. Yeah, the majority goes to WEF. Yeah, same with AW, but NUA had some legacy members from before. I'm not sure if I fully understand it, but from like when they agreed to become a member association, they were independent till like 1970. And for whatever reason, they had two different things. AWWA did not. It doesn't fall within their model. I believe Arizona was also another one they're messing with. I don't know I know there's another one or two that. Anyway, it went around and around and around, and they spent far more money, both organizations, than the cost they would recover in a million years. Nonetheless, NUA voted internally to leave AWWA, overwhelming their membership there. At this point, AWWA now started a rival organization, New England AWWA. It's more of a startup now, but they're staffing it. So it's a rival organization.
Yeah.
Or as someone said to me, so how's that one water thing working, Bob? Because when you were president, there was one water association and one clean water association. Now there's two drinking water associations. I said, yeah, that didn't work out so well for me.
Yeah, now we got 3 water. Explain the difference between drinking water, clean water.
Yeah, so that's basically drinking water is your drinking water.
Yep.
And clean water is wastewater. We're using the SRF terms. So these are the federal terms that EPA would use, state revolving loan funds and everything else. The federal terms would be drinking water and clean water. Clean water is wastewater.
Gotcha.
Okay. So yeah, how'd that work out?
Interesting. I could talk associations all day, every day. When I first got into the industry, associations helped me stay energized about what's going on, stay informed about what's going on. But I would say the higher you get up into these associations, you start to see it's like, oh, it's money involved, a lot of money involved. And that can kind of start turning people away from it. And
turf. Yep. Yeah, sadly, at the lower levels, certainly we have like 40 some committees. It's, and once again, I can say nothing but good things about WAF, AWWA, NUA, NUIA. They're great organizations that, bring people together.
Yeah.
Convalesce everything. So that's very good. My goal was just to have more above that level, more cooperation.
Yeah.
Than just internally. And it's a long evolving thing. It will continue to move forward because efficiency is just more efficient. So it will eventually rise to the top, no matter what. But I've seen it everywhere.
If you could wave your magic wand and get one water done. Would you want there to be one huge water conference like WEF and WEFTech, or AWWA and WEFTech at the same time?
No, so that's I've been asked that. I have no really supervision for this. Mine was just more of a framework, and I'm not necessarily opposed or in favor of that. Mine was just the more communication level, certainly. So there'll be meetings, not just with, and there already are meetings with WEF and AWWA. For example, for the first time in many years, they're going to the fly-in together. I wrote an article, my first article. You have to write quarterly articles in the NWEA Journal, basically bashing them from the previous year from being a month apart. Because when you show up at a senator's office, clean water, drinking water, they're like, weren't you here last week?
Yeah.
Pipes under the ground. They don't really know. Why don't you? So in Vermont, we have always gone for at least, I think since the first time I did it with the new, well over 10 years now, we have gone together and agreed. Last year, we agreed to do it under WEF's timetable because AWWA was like a later, and NACWA was also, and everyone was together. But for once now, I'm not saying it was because of me, my shaming them, but certainly synergy and efficiencies, they are going to go together now. As
Nice.
Vermont has no, our Vermont, we go to see our two senators and our rep together, the drinking water and clean water, for at least 10 years now, regardless of what the other organization said, because it only makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, that was a lot, which is great. I love association talk. Let's talk more about Bob.
Yeah.
What got Bob into this industry? You didn't wake up as, having an office like you got and all that. Give us from 15 years old, high school Bob, kind of your career path and what led you into the water space.
Well, so it was in Buffalo, and I'm quite old. So I also had a drag race car, etc. All that really matters. The end of the story is I was expelled from high school. In my senior year.
What kind of car? What were we running? Let's hear it.
70 Charger RT with a 440 30 over with the GMC 671 and two Holly 600s on it.
Okay.
So
in high school.
In high school, yes. At the
Dude, and that just shows how
1980.
much times have changed, because
that car is worth a mint now.
Yeah, exactly. Like high schoolers are driving Honda Civics like hand-me-downs nowadays.
Yeah, now back then you could, I bought the car for $2,500. I put about 4 into the motor, and eventually I broke even when I sold it. Now you can add a 0 on that. Instead of $6,500, it's probably $65,000.
Yeah.
But that's just how these things go. So what happened is I had good SAT scores. I went to college, went to the SUNY system, where the failure rate, I believe, was 50% in 1980 for freshmen. I believe the graduation rate was 17%. But since I'd already been expelled, I really had nowhere to go but up. I then graduated with degrees in biology and history, and I moved out west because I'm also a competitive ski racer and was in freestyle. And I moved to Lake Tahoe, where I was at what is now called Palisades Tahoe on the team there, the Far West team.
South Lake or North Lake?
North Lake.
Okay.
It was previously called.
I'm from California, so we always went to South Lake.
Well, that's where all the casinos are and everything. More, much larger. Our first house was in Kings Beach.
Okay.
And, I actually, long before I married my wife there, I actually worked at the casino counting the money at night, so I could ski race during the day on the North Shore. And I can tell you, the one people that don't gamble in a casino, the casino. You count the same amount of money. It's all statistics based on more people, more money. But yeah, they don't.
They're the only ones winning that night. Yeah.
Terrible job. So anyway, I became a federal fishery biologist, and I became in the Truckee Ranger District. I was in charge of that. I then went up to the coast with the Fish and Wildlife Service and the Yurok tribe, where I was in charge of that, the offshore fishery and the onshore fishery for the Klamath River, which is the largest Indian tribe, the Yuroks, YUROK. And once again, I think the only time the state, the tribes ever agreed on anything is when I sent the harvest for 55,000 onshore and offshore, so 110 combined for the Indians and the offshore fishermen. When they both went about 15,000 over, I told them next year we need to subtract that from this number, and they all agreed for me to shut up. And the harvest last year was 5. The tribe was allowed to take 5 there is no offshore fishery, and they were allowed to take 5 fish. Now, a lot of that wasn't necessarily because of overfishing. Some of it was, a lot of it was the drought. And just that's why they're removing those dams in the Klamath right now as we speak. But once again, on sort of a one water theme, way back when, my very first week there, I went to the California Water Resources Division, the Fish and Game office. It was a large office. I believe it was in Arcata or Eureka. And I walked in and said, hey, I'm the new Fed in town. And I can see some of your markers are right where mine are. And these redwoods are in rough shape. We need to work together. This much work, this, that. Yeah, I had no idea what the relationship between the state of California and the federal government was, but let's just say it was not good. So as they all panicked, the secretaries, and said, well, he's not here. Eventually, the supervisor, whoever was in charge of that, showed up, and I said, let's work together. After a few minutes, I got the impression that wasn't going anywhere. So then I said, could I at least have your annual report? That's public record, so I could at least see what you're doing. And he said, I'd love to, but it's out of print. We will have to get that to you. As I watched secretaries take them off their desk and put them in the drawers right in front of me.
Yeah.
Anyway, how'd that work out? So, so then I continued on. I then became I then moved up, because your next job as a fishery biologist is generally not where you're at. If it's in the federal government, it's like the military. I was a 7, I became a 9/11. And I took the job as the assistant forest fishery biologist for the El Dorado, which is outside of Sacramento, where they had, the area where Pollock Pines, where they had the 49er strike back in the day. Yep. And my only question I asked was, how's your funding? Because I'd been a Fed a while. And they said, oh, that's your only question? I said, yeah. And they said, good. And it wasn't their fault that a year plus later, there was a big cut in Region 5. And they said, you can move on to Montana or Oregon for 6 months. And my wife said, we have 3 children. We've moved 7 times in 7 years. So I looked good on paper. So I bought a house on North Shore in Kings Beach. It closed September 30th, October 1st, the new federal year. I was out of a job.
Wow.
So I went down to Reno, got a job at a brand new dog food plant for making Cal-Can. It was very interesting. I got to know the Marses, actually. Very strange. Another weird story. Ate dinner with them, and don't ask me how I blend her into these things. I'm sort of like Forrest Gump or something. I could tell you about their whole family, dysfunctional family. Excuse me. And there was an opening at the wastewater facility in Truckee, and that's where our house was. So I kind of came in backwards. The other fishery biologist said to me, "Oh, you're chasing finless brown trouts now, huh?"
I like it.
So I had no idea at the time. I had toured the buffalo plant. I remember they stuck us in the covered primary for a while. I get the joke now, put the college boys in the most stinky spot. And I said, I'd never work in one of those places. Turns out I've done far more for the environment than I ever did as a fishery biologist. It was, a lot of that was, especially in the federal government, was triage, it was timber sales. Luckily, I did a lot of research. I did harvest management. You can see how those numbers worked out. I've done far more here. I've tens of thousands of pounds I've eliminated basically by just freeing up the chief operators. I've been here 9 years, and when I got here, both chief operators had over 30 years experience, and they were averaging about 0.35 milligrams going out. Now they're both averaging 0.04 annually. And I got glory for really reducing it by saying, can you do better? And that was my input.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we can spend more money. And I said, have at it. And they did. And we basically produce drinking water now.
Wow.
So that's how I ended up backwards, like everyone else does. I needed a job. I was, water already. I was in the, I owned a house. I needed a job. And then I said, I'm also a skier. So if you want to move around, there's always a wastewater plant. It's like being a nurse or something. There's not always a fishery biologist job. So they offered me one when I came back to, my wife said, I want to move back east several thousand times a day in the late 90s. I said, no way. I stood up to her like the man I am. Anyway, our 4th child was born in Vermont. We moved here. And I then started at the bottom again, basically as an operator in Middlebury, Stratton actually first, then Middlebury. Then I became the assistant chief operator in Montpelier, the capital, then the chief operator. And then this position opened up, and it's about the highest paying one in the state. And those 4 children all went to the University of Vermont. Well, 3 of them did. Beautiful. One of them went to the University of York. They all graduated. And I needed a job that paid more. because it's a very expensive state college, and I'm very proud of them. All 4 of them are graduates, unlike
Nice.
me, who was expelled from high school, even though they don't actually know this story yet. So hopefully they don't see this, but I will tell them someday now that they've all graduated. They know I'm a college graduate, but I wasn't about to tip that hand at the beginning because then they could hold it over me. I could drop out or something.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my stupid life, more or less.
Okay.
And then besides that, I'm also I'm a ski coach at Killington for 20. It's the largest resort in the East. And I freestyle. I do moguls and park, and I'm the oldest and fattest freestyle coach you'll ever see. I'll be there this weekend. I have no days off for 4 months. I'm 5 days here and 2 days there. And for instance, the last Olympics for the United States for females, there's 4 people that competed in China for moguls, and 2 of them were mine.
Wow.
And one of them sent me a nice poster that said, "Where are the cookies?" Because I told her I'd buy her cookies if she got the Olympics. So I got her Pepperidge Farm Tahoe cookies.
Okay.
And they sent me a nice postcard that said, "Thank you for making a difference in my life." And
Yeah.
so that's a lot of fun. And I generally do the 10, 12-year-olds now. I've worked my way down. I'm the oldest coach there. And these are the top level athletes in the United States at this level. And my back hurts.
Yeah. You like the slopes on the East Coast or in the Sierras more?
Sierras.
Come on, man.
But I'm a Killington coach, so hopefully no one sees that. But yeah, you can go from east to west, from the ice to the softer stuff. Obviously, it's more, Killington's the king of snowmaking, and out west, it's hit and miss. You'd sit there under the dome praying that a storm would come to Lake Tahoe.
Yeah, been there.
Yeah, and just 50 degrees. Here, we have the opposite. When it's sunny and clear, it's because there's also a big high rotating, but it's not below us, it's above us.
Yeah.
So it was like -9 because when it's sunny, it's over Hudson Bay. So it rotates the sun and the clouds out, and it's freaking cold. And the reason it's icy here, generally, people think, well, it's because it's so cold. It's not. It's because it always rains sometime. It's so dramatic up and down, and it rains, and then it freezes.
Yep.
It's cold, and it freezes.
Yep.
So anyway, yeah.
Okay. How do you have?
Go ahead.
You seem pretty busy. How do you have time to play the piano? I see a piano behind you.
Not much, but I have them there, and not much.
Gotcha.
On break or something.
Gotcha. We got to get to some of these questions. This has been great so far. About 30 minutes left. So you're the water quality superintendent. Give us the 30-second foot view of what you actually do from day to day, like a random Tuesday. What is Bob doing from the time you get in to the time you leave?
Paperwork.
Okay.
It's just sort of like being a fishery biologist. When you're a 5, you're a 7, you're a 9, maybe even 11. You're doing field work. You're doing field work. Same thing here. You're operator. You're outside. You're taking tests. You're building pumps and whatnot. As you work your way up, same as a fishery biologist, you eventually just end up at a desk.
Yeah.
And I do go out occasionally. They'll use me as like if they're fixing a large pump, they'll use me as a weight. Stand here, because that's where I bring value. So basically, we have 2 very advanced wastewater facilities here. We produce Class A EQ biosolids. We produce electricity off the methane. We have a micro turbine. And like I said, we're putting out extremely clean water, BODs generally around 1, TSS around 1, phosphorus about 0.04. We have also 35 pump stations. We are the growth area. We're the 2nd largest municipality in Vermont. We also take in Colchester. So we've taken about 24,000 people. Burlington's about 56,000. They're the largest municipality right next to us. But they have much older infrastructure, and they have some serious financial difficulties, and they don't have the advanced facilities that we have. And they only have 25 pump stations or 3 facilities, but they don't have anaerobic digestion. They don't produce, and they're turning one of them to a pump station. And they have a staff of 25. I have a staff of 7. So we're very efficient for 35 pump stations, 2 large facilities. And I basically, I oversee things, questions and whatnot, but really what I do is the paperwork, the state report, the billing, the invoicing, because I got my degrees in biology and history from college because I don't like math or English. And all I do is math and English.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
write for NUIA, et cetera. And, I do budgeting, et cetera, and billing. So yeah, how'd that work out?
Okay.
But it's fine. It's a great position, and I couldn't recommend it more.
Sure.
You really help the environment and public health. That's why we're here to start with. It's completely public health.
Let's say youngsters in your office, and they're trying to get advice from you. They're saying, Bob, what is the main skill set, the number one skill set they should pick up to be successful at what you're doing today? What would that skill set be?
To start out, it wouldn't hurt to have some mechanical skills
Really?
when you're starting, but also just drive and the desire to learn. Everything's quite advanced and getting more advanced. SCADA, everything. We just passed a $34 million bond. We're upgrading our smaller facility, Bartlett, which has not been upgraded since '99, and we are going with Veolia, and we are, I believe, the first American application of a hub service. So what it'll basically be, they have about 70 in Europe. And when I said, well, let me talk to them first before I accepted this. And they said, yeah, they're in Denmark. I said, no, I need somebody where it freezes. So they had them in Sweden too. So that was better. And what'll happen is you make adjustments every day. You adjust your air, your wasting and whatnot. This will be remote. There's always cybersecurity issues. We work a lot with CISA, the federal agency for the cybersecurity.
Okay.
But when we can disconnect it if need be, but you can't possibly it's sort of like flying an airplane now. The pilots don't fly it that much. It'll make micro adjustments all day long. So it'll say, hey, I don't need quite as much air. So it'll be more for chemical efficiency and for overall efficiency and for even potentially better effluent, but we're putting out really clean water as it is. But it will be making micro adjustments on numerous parameters. We'll have many more probes we'll have to maintain. But basically, it'll be making adjustments all day long. It'll also be tied into our pump stations and tied into the weather service. So if it sees a storm coming, it may draw some of the tanks down and do other AI type stuff. So we'll see how that works. We're about a year and a half from breaking ground, probably. We're getting close to 90% design. But we have already agreed to do that and work with Veolia on that.
Okay. All right. It's story time. I need a story from Bob. When something went terribly wrong under your watch, what you did to fix it, and then what lessons you learned from it to apply to your future career.
Oh, there are many things that went wrong. The Army Guard lost 750 gallons of AFFF out of a tank. They hadn't used it since 2013, but they did not have the money to get rid of it. Well, they got rid of it when the flange failed in the middle of the night. So I was in the newspaper and TV. It's a small state for weeks dealing with that. But I would think there's so many different incidences, but I would say that in Montpelier, when I was there was a small door that led out to the primaries, which were kind of recessed primaries, and they weren't circular. They were rectangle with moving bridges. And the old chief operator was assistant chief. There was a small door, but it was a small hatch door, like a ship. He used to bang his head on it. So when we had an upgrade, he put a regular door in there, and we were all pretty happy. When the flood came, Irene and whatnot, and I was standing on the staircase watching the water come around the door, but still the pumps were keeping up. Luckily, I went upstairs when the door blew and took the transformers with it and flooded the entire building. I then went back to the 1964 blueprints, which were blue, and found the 50-year, and it was right about 50 years. I'm saying it's coincidence where the high water mark was, and that's exactly where it was.
Wow.
Of that door. So I spent $10,000 and got a much larger door for a ship if it ever happens again. So, try to think things through.
I like it. Thanks for that. All right. So how does Bob continue to get better and better year after year? You've been doing this for some time, with your association involvement. I'm sure you probably know more than the average person in your types of position. But what's the internal driver that keeps you learning and keeps you showing up better and better year after year?
Yeah, that's hard. I think I'm going down, really.
Okay.
But, I just have always desired to learn. That's all you really need is desire to learn. It's like in Montpelier, I hired 2 people, both of them college graduates, and the one I hired first, he became in charge of the lab, but he really just had no desire. The one I hired, the younger one, he had great desire and he learned everything. And for instance, the old mechanic was retiring after 40 years and all the maintenance was done in a book that he had. And I said, you need to follow him and suck his brain out for the next 6 months. And he did. And we computerized everything, got a maintenance program. So everything from his head went into the computer. And
Beautiful.
Chris is now, after I left, the other person left that just wasn't motivated. And Chris is now the chief operator there. He was my assistant chief. And now for the last 9 years, he's the chief operator. And they're doing some great things there too. Desire to learn. That's all it is. I mean, if you're not learning and just, what are you doing? You're I don't know.
Right?
I
Yeah.
learn something new every day. Now I have a very small hard drive because it's a 1962 model here. And, and I still got all those Gilligan Islands up there. So I don't want to lose those, So there's only limited capacity. But, really my 4 children, all have done great, college graduates. I mentioned the $220,000 I owe on Parent Plus loans. So that also keeps me driving to work.
Yeah.
I told them for succession planning 2083. And I told them at the 10-year mark, I may have to push it back, but I'm going to hold steady at 2083 at the moment. I'll be 140 or something, but
23 it is. I'll come knock on your door, see if you're still there.
Yeah, it's only 50 years or so, whatever the math is.
All right, let's say you're on a ski lift, right? You're going up the mountain. It's just you and some other random person sitting. You know how it is. It's that awkward, like, should we talk? Should we not talk? That person asks you, what do you do? And when you after you tell them what do you think that they think? What are some of the biggest misconceptions about your position?
Yeah, well, they think that a lot of them think that it's degrading the environment, that they don't realize the public health aspect. They'll be like, oh, it's stinky or something. No, it's not. I'm sitting at a desk here. It's not stinky at all. There's 1 or 2 rooms out there that are, but if you go on a tour, but most of it isn't. And, they don't really realize how much you're doing for the environment. For instance, in Vermont, in 1985, 60% of the phosphorus entering Lake Champlain was from wastewater facilities. Now it's 3%. They've made very little headway on every other sector. But unfortunately, it's wastewater that the only one they can regulate because of the Clean Water Act, and they would never have got the Midwest farmers to sign off if the farms didn't get an exemption, yada, yada, yada. What I'm testifying a lot now is biosolids. When we were in Montpelier, we landfilled it. Here, we land apply it. We no longer go to farms for political reasons and whatnot. We mix it in a 5% mix for VTrans, the state highway division. And they love it. It goes 5 miles down the road. They mix it in with 5%, wood ash, I'd be 5% us. It's still showing no higher than background PFAS levels. And it's a good use of the fertilizer that, because we concentrate all the phosphorus and nitrogen in it. A lot of people say, hey, I once said, hey, you're leaving a legacy of brownfields. I said, one of the senators, I said, well, first of all, let's talk about the 55% of Vermonters on septic tanks, the most in the nation. Those don't treat for PFAS. You want to talk about land application of solids, not to mention 10 to 15% are failing, although Lake George actually just did their first, they're fairly wealthy. They did a survey of all the houses around the lake. They forced everyone to do it, and 53% failed. And these are generally newer, large, it's lakefront Lake George. This is not cheap. So that shows the disaster that can be. I mean, I process I think if you just had 2.5 people, if you had 6 to 7 houses that were completely failed, say about 14, 15 people, that would be the same phosphorus per year as the 24,000 people that I'm treating here. Going out. And I can put filters on for PFAS. I can, the technology is advancing. I can use granular activated carbon, etc. You really want to concentrate things in. So as I explained to them, if you want to ban land application, that's fine. But just so you realize, I am then going to have to haul it at a much higher cost that I could spend that money somewhere else, but I'm not even going to discuss the cost. I got to haul it a long ways, probably to Canada. Huge increase in greenhouse gases, huge increase. And then they have to import the phosphorus with trains, more greenhouse gas. And it appears to be for initial testing, a lot of those pesticides and phosphorus got PFAS in them. So I don't know what you're trying to do. I realize it sounds good on paper. There's no easy solutions. That's the whole issue. No easy solutions.
Yeah. Okay. Let's say you're commissioned to put up a billboard. This billboard is in the most trafficked area of South Burlington. What ask of your community in regards to water, wastewater would you put on this billboard?
Well, one of them would be like, don't flush wipes.
Yeah.
They're not flushable. I actually got interviewed for the local TV show, and as someone said, wow, it was going great to the last minute. Your wife's going to kill you. And yeah, so I told the true story of how my daughter is like 27 now. When she was 16, the older daughter, I was on TV on the Don't Flush Wipes guy on the local news. Well, it's Vermont, so all her friends saw it, and she was mortified that her dad was the Don't Flush It guy when she's 16 years old. Christmas Eve, my 1890 house, something happens. There's water. It is plugged. I then get a rotter, and I start working on it at midnight with my wife, and I pull out a wipe and another one and another one. I'm like, I was on TV.
I'm the TV guy.
She goes, well, I thought you were over exaggerating. I'll never do it again. And she hasn't since. It took a lot. And then the house plugged up one or two more times as they worked their way through. And a lot of effort for me to get these old things still going. But I did. But yeah, it shows how much impact I had,
Yeah, some great influence you have.
Well, I told that story, yeah, and my wife wasn't happy. But it's all true.
Good stuff. Good stuff. A lot of people focus on the aging infrastructure of our country. A lot of these pipes underground, they're old. I'm sure you've seen, brick. You've seen maybe wood in your lifetime.
Wood.
I like to focus on the aging workforce. Those who are in the industry, they're looking at the door. They got 3 years left. They're going to take all that institutionalized knowledge. What have you seen out there that's worked in regards to getting the knowledge from them to the youngsters coming into the industry?
It is hard to get people in. So we've actually realized this industry-wide. NUWA, and I believe APWA was involved also. And all the state associations, 12 of them, water and wastewater across the 6 New England states, we put money in together and we hired a consultant to come and help us with workforce development. We hired her from the Bay Works. This is New England Works. And basically they had the same issue in San Francisco, extremely expensive place to live. Couldn't get any operators. The average age of an operator in Vermont is 56 currently, and a lot of them getting ready to retire. I'm going to lose both chief operators, one this year, another one in 2 years. And what can we do? The best model I've seen so far is the Georgia Water Tower, but I believe that has a large industry. I'm not sure which company, if it's Veolia or one of them, one of the large ones, Ovivo or something, is helping fund it. And they actually have a campus, and you can go there if you want to get in the industry, and they will pay you to go and pay you, and they will train you and get your license. They have a website, Georgia Water Tower, I believe it's called. We're still more in the infancy. We've just paid the consultant to help set this up, but we're really trying to drive the industry because once again, people don't know we're here and they don't realize it's a really good career. I have good state benefits, and if I could retire, if it wasn't for the $220,000 in Parent Plus loans, I get 60% of my final wage, and I'm up over 100 here. So that's not bad.
Yeah, that's good money for retirement for sure. Okay, thanks for asking that because that's something that's always on my mind and I guess on my heart to learn.
Very hard. So that's why we actually have a large consortium of the water wastewater operators, and we paid to develop this group, and we're going to try to do more reaching out and just try to get people in. But everyone else you're competing with too, everyone else needs it too.
Yep. Diesel mechanics are short. Everybody's short.
Yeah, Public Works. I think they got one mechanic. The other mechanic position, it's been open since I started here 9 years ago. They can't fill it.
Wow. Yeah. When I always like to leave a space on the show for you to thank mentors that you had along your journey, and then I also want you to give a word of motivation and inspiration to your fellow water counterparts across the country.
One would be Jim Jutras. He's retired now. He was very knowledgeable. And just like me, I'm always willing to stop and talk to anyone about it. I'm always willing to give a tour to anybody. If they want to come, I give tours to high school classes. I work with University of Vermont. They've done numerous capstone projects here. They did a design here, and the design team went to the national championship and came in second behind the Colorado Mines school. And yeah, and just that you don't realize, this is public health is the main reason we're here, but environmental benefits, it's just have such impact in these facilities that you just don't realize, because we're quiet and it's under the ground, and it's generally the most expensive thing you own. I mean, you don't generally get I have a $6 million budget, over six, and I spend it all. Yeah. Generally I returned some last year, but some years I can't. Things go up, things go down, especially there was huge pricing, huge increases in costs after Corona came around. So, it's a great field to be in, and people that generally go into it don't leave. They stay here. And it's just, it's generally the most expensive thing in town. Your roads and bridges are expensive. When you think of all the pipes under the ground, it's been built over time, just like the highway system. It's just, it's an incredible amount of things that you control. And I do like being here in the smaller ones, because you're sort of a jack of all trades. I mean, it's rare I'd go out and plow, but I might or something. But there's all sorts of different things I have to do. Some larger facility, I've toured like the Sacramento plant. When you spend your whole life being an expert on a bar screen, you may spend your head in headworks, and that's your whole career. Here, you've got to be very flexible. You've got to be able to do everything, you name it.
Somebody new getting into the industry, would you advise them go to a smaller utility or go to somewhere like Sacramento where you're kind of learning one thing?
Well, it's really locational generally where you are. I'd probably tell them to go to the bigger one, because you're going to, and then maybe go to the smaller one, because you're going to get probably more benefits and wages at the larger one. So that's why I would probably tell them to go there, better benefits and whatnot. And there'll just be more training and whatnot, But like anyone that starts here, I don't let them go out without full training. The first day they sit down to all the safety, bloodborne pathogens, slip trips, all the suite before I even send them anywhere. And then they basically just learn from the other operators.
Yeah. All right. Let's say I'm coming to town. I'm coming to South Burlington, and I text you ahead of time. I say, Bob, where can I go to get the best burger in town?
People ask.
Where you get?
That is a good question, because I live 45 minutes away at the Capitol. Now. I commute, and they give me a truck and gas, and I commute, so I'm not complaining. Probably Al's would be the one that I would go to. It's a 1950s drive-in, and it's very just like you would expect.
Yeah,
it's French fries and burgers, and it hasn't changed since 1950s, including the sign and whatnot. It looks very retro.
I like it. Al's it is. All right. Well, Bob, thanks for hopping on the podcast today. Thanks for sharing your wealth of information and knowledge with us. We could talk for hours. I'm sure of it. But thanks for hopping on. To all the listeners out there, make sure you share this with somebody who you think needs to hear it. Bob, any final words before we get out of here?
One water.
One water.
keep working on that. Efficiencies. These are expensive, very expensive systems, and a lot of them are really in trouble. Yeah. And the federal government just isn't covering it. It was 50% back in the 70s, like it is for railroad and air. Now it's less than 5%, and who knows how it's going to drop even more now. Wow. SRF is getting eaten up, because once they let earmarks in, now they take that out of the SRF. So that's no longer a revolving loan fund. It doesn't revolve back in, because those are grants. So there's all sorts of pressures on. Basically, everything continues to get shoved down. The Fed shove it down to the state, and the state can't afford it. Shove it to the local municipality, and everyone complains about their rates and this and that. We do have the lowest rates in the state, actually. We're very lucky, because it is a growth area here. Okay. And we're the ring around Burlington, unlike Burlington, which really isn't growing. So they're really got issues.
Gotcha.
So, and plus it's really interesting, especially, I'm also a 4C water operator. It's Vermont, which is the highest level. And I've run water facilities on the side, smaller ones. But especially wastewater it's very interesting, the things going on. Essex Junction has had net zero before. We could, but we don't control the solar field. But we're looking always for energy efficiencies, cleaner water, and there's just so many interesting technologies coming down that you need a lot of knowledge, and everything's computerized, and you got to know a lot of a breadth of knowledge. It takes years to learn this stuff.
Yeah, where are you getting your information from? Are you going to conferences? You read magazines? Okay.
Magazines. I'll read WEF. I get the daily WEF briefs, and NACWA also is a great resource I use quite a bit. And then conference. I'll be at the conference Saturday till Wednesday, and there'll be some great sessions.
Okay. All right. Well,
you just get it from everywhere.
Yeah. Just soak it all up. All right. Well, Bob, thanks for hopping on. This has been the Public Works Podcast, and thank you everybody for tuning in.